Hello everyone, welcome to the session. Quickly, we'll move on to our EC2 instance. So EC2 is a compute instance. It is the basic, I would say, infrastructure as a service. You need to have a EC2, and the best way I believe to understand EC2 is I generally say that let's go to the EC2 pricing calculator. So you say EC. If you go to AWS pricing calculator, you'll be finding this calculator.aws. So we have another calculator.s3.amazonaws.com. This is the old version. Go for this calculator.aws. This is how you can create an estimate of any resources that you use even before you start using it. So create an estimate, choose a service that you would like to use. So I'll say I need EC2. So Amazon Elastic Cloud Compute, EC2, is a web service that provides secure, resizable compute capacity in the cloud. So this is what is important, resizable compute capacity in the cloud. So it's all about the compute. So what all is required for a compute capacity? If we talk about, even if I'll go to the advanced estimate, even if we talk about a computer at our home or a laptop at our home, what do we see? The first thing is that which operating system do we need? So yes, we need to explain, we need to provide that which operating system it is, and we'll see the different AMIs, Amazon, that we have. Machine images. So AMI is Amazon machine images that we create actually as a template with which you can start and provision the EC2 instances. So it depends on which operating system you need. Let's say I need a simple Linux instance. And when you think about a computer, it's about what kind of workload do you need. So for now, we'll keep it simple and we use it as a constant usage. But this is mainly for the pricing and not for exactly which configuration. EC2 instance. So there are multiple instance family types that we have, and it will not be required to know in detail for cloud practitioner or for that matter in solution architect associate. It will be required at a high level, not in a very deep level to understand those. It might be required for the professional level a bit. But from the perspective, what all do we need? We provide the CPUs, that vCPUs, which we call that how many vCPUs are required, which is virtual CPUs that you need, what memory is required, and how much network performance is required. So when you provide these, it is going to give you options. And based on those options, you can choose which particular instance type you need. And if you see, each instance type just tells you the memory, the CPUs, what kind of network performance it's going to give you, the storage, we'll talk about that. Okay, so if I try and see, like in case if you want to have, so on demand is like usage, how much price it is going to what do you call consume. If I try and show you the maximum VPC, so we have this size instance X12 which has 128 vCPUs for very high workloads. But yeah, we'll keep it simple. We are going to use a T3A Nano or a T2 Micro. These are generally T2 Micro, I believe, is mostly in the free tier, so we're going to use that when we use the console. From the pricing strategy perspective, and this is actually important, we will start with the on demand. So when you take a compute instance, so it is not like we are buying a fixed asset here. We are buying a server which we need to place it on in a data center. It is like it's more of a pay as you go pricing model. So you're going to rent it or reserve it. So when we talk about on demand, so it's about pay for compute capacity per hour or per second, depending upon which instances you run. So based on the kind of instance you have chosen, you can choose for the billing of capacity per hour or per second billing. And this is the most widely type used when you're getting started. So any new organization getting started who are not aware of the kind of the load that they will be expecting over the time, they're going to choose on demand. Then it comes the reserved type. So if I go to on demand and if I show the calculation, so it says that one instance for this on demand costly is that it's going to be 8 USDs hourly cost, monthly cost for 730 hours in a month. So for a month, for this particular instance type, it is going to cost just 8 USD. When you talk about all reserved, so reserved instances provide significant discount. It is actually, because you are going to reserve this particular instance for a long duration, because you can predict your load and you would like to use it for a longer term. So you can reserve the instance, and that is why it is going to give you a significant discount compared to on-demand instance pricing. From the reservation terms perspective, it can be either a 1 year reservation on 3 year reservation. I would come back to convertible instances, but before that, upfront payment. There are three types of upfront payments. You can pay for 3 years or 1 year all at once full. You can pay it partially and the rest as an ongoing cost, or you can say that it will be all as ongoing cost, no upfront payment at all. Depending upon which you choose, the cost will be that. For example, in 1 year, uh, if it is not a convertible, if it is full upfront, it is going to cost you 59, and then that's it. You do not pay any monthly cost. But in case if you do go for partial, you need to pay 34, and for monthly you need to pay 3. Based on your preference, you can choose whichever one. Now, adding angle to it, though companies reserve it for 1 year or 3 years, but with time they might realize that some other instance family is better for them, or they might need some extra RAM, or they might need a different number of CPU cores or so. So if you can book a convertible instance, in that case, with a little premium, you will be able to convert instance even though you have reserved specific. So if it is a convertible instance, then obviously it will be a bit more price. So in reservation, you have 1 year or 3 year terms. Payment perspective, it is partial, none, or full upfront payment, and is whether it's a convertible instance or a non-convertible instance, and price will be depending upon that. You can always have a mix of on-demand and reserved. Reserved mainly for the predictable load, and on-demand for the unpredictable load. Then the interesting things comes as spot instance. Spot instance is mainly a way for Amazon to provide the unused uh, compute power into a bidding way, that anyone who wants to use uh, compute instances but do not want to reserve it or pay high prices, then they can use the spot instances, and the free compute instances in each region are generally set for that. It allows you to request spare Amazon EC2 computing capacity and up to 90%. Now, from the instance saving plans, whether it is EC2 instance saving plan or computer saving plans, these are pretty recent saving plans that was released. I am not sure if they will be incorporated within the exams yet, but these are saving plans mainly for when you commit a hourly spend on the instance family over a period of a long period of time. If you know that there is a specific time periods then when you would be utilizing your compute capacity, you can reserve it for that particular pattern, and with that you will be able to use the savings plan instead of reserving the instance for the entire 24 hours for the entire 3 year duration. You can do it for a specific uh, time slots of a pattern, which allows you to have these specific saving plans. That's a pretty much from the understanding the EC2 instance. Each EC2 instance will be needing a kind of a storage. Like we have a computer, we do have a hard disk, so we have this EBS, elastic block storage. We'll talk about it in the storage section, but this is a persistence block storage volumes that you can attach to EC2 instance, where it's going to store the data. So let's go back to our so, and we will go to EC2. I see we have half an hour left, so hopefully we'll be able to cover a few things here, and then I need to switch to S3 also, which is our simple storage service. So EC2 instance, this dashboard, we see that running instance is 0. So let's try and launch an instance. So I'm going to launch an instance. So the first thing it says is that choose the Amazon machine image. So AMI is a template that contains software configuration, mainly the operating system, application server, and applications, the specific that you wish. So let's go with Amazon Linux to AMI. Select, and then it's asked us that which particular instance type that we want. It provides the with how much we CPU and memory that particular has. Go for the free tier eligible ones. Do not go for the other ones because that's will going to cost you. And then go to the configuration details. So number of instances, we need one instance, which is fine for now. We do not need spot instances for now. From the network perspective, so if you see by default, it defaults it to the default, but we need to go to the custom VPC that we created, or to keep it simple, let's keep it to default VPC for now. In the subnet perspective, we have three subnets. Each subnet is a specific availability zone. So use a specific availability zone or subnet in which you would like to launch this instance. Auto assign public IP. So if this is going to be enabled, then you will be that particular instance will be assigned a public IP. I will talk about placement group later. IAM role. So this need will be attached in case if this EC2 instance need to access any AWS resources, and we'll see that hopefully today if we have some time. So I'm not going to change anything here much. I'm going to go to add storage. By default, you see there is a root volume that is going to attach to it. We're going to keep it as it is as a root volume. We have an option to create the tags, which is mainly for the tracking purpose. Security group, we can create a new security group, or we can use the existing security group. If we see existing security group, so it says that all traffic is there everywhere, but instead of that, let's create a new security group. And what we see is that in this new security group, we are allowing, so this is how a security group can be created. What type of traffic each of this, like for example SSH, it's going to allow TCP on the port 22 from any IP address. Let's say in case if you're creating a web server, then you would like to allow your HTTP ports and HTTPS ports, or is any specific, for example, let's say you have a subnet for your MySQL, then you would like to have your MySQL Aurora port to be opened. So it depends upon what exactly you would like your instance to be used for, and the security group will be designed according to that. So in this specific instance, let's say this instance is going to be mainly used for SSH, and we'll keep the web server open. So I'll not be using it for a database. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to review and launch. Okay, now here, this is what will be required for accessing your EC2 instance. So these are SSH keys. So you can create a new key pair. So you can, let's say I can say as my key pair. I can download the key pair. This is going to give me a secure key pair, which is a public private key, which I'll be able to use to access the EC2 instance. And this will be your task for this week. Once you have set up your CLI, use the CLI to access your EC2 instance through the CLI using the key pair. I'm going to launch the instance. So instance is getting launched. Let us go back to our instance to see if the instance state is pending. It is initializing. It will take probably a couple of minutes to initialize the instance. As you see, it has got a public IP address because we did mention that it's the public IP is enabled there. It would be having its own private IP address. So if you see the private IP address, and this IP address would belong to the IP address range of the subnet that we have chosen. Okay, so now this is instance state is running. The status test is initializing, but that is fine. It is running. So now we can connect to this particular instance. So if we click on connect, there are multiple options. One is standalone SSH client. You can use your CLI client to connect. One is session manager. We'll talk about that later, probably in week 5, 6, 7, or 8. It will not be required for cloud practitioner. EC2 Instance Connect. So this is a web-based connection that you can use to connect, and we'll be going to use. It's going to inherently use the key pair that we have generated, because AWS already knows it's going to inherently use that and allow you to connect to the instance. Log into this particular IP address. We see this was the IP address that was there, and this is the user. So I'm into that particular instance. So here I can simply run Linux commands. I am here, ls. There is no folder here. I can create my own directories and stuff if needed. One good thing is that AWS CLI works here. So if I write version, it's going to tell me that is AWS CLI is there. So I can try and access the resources. So for example, if I try and access AWS S3 LS, it says no, you can't, because unable to locate the credentials. You need to configure your credentials by running AWS configure. So if you have set up CLI, you would have done it on the local. You would have run AWS configure to set up a specific user who will be having access to access the resources. But giving instance user credentials through configure is not the right way to do it. It is the roles. If there's a EC2 instance or is there any particular service, then it's the roles through which you should be controlling the access of whether it should be having the access or not. So what we are going to do is that we are going to create a role for this particular thing. So I'm going to go and create a, I'll go to IAM. And one thing that you would notice here is that IAM is a global service. So any users that you will be creating, it will not region specific. Any roles that you will be creating is not region specific. It is global. For example, we create EC2 instance that is regional. VPC, it's regional, but IAM resources are global resources. There are other services which are global. For example, we were talking about Route 53 and other services. In the roles here, I think I already created a role here, EC2 S3 access. Let me do one thing. Let me delete these roles and I'll create it now. So I'll create a role, and I create a role for EC2 instance, because EC2 instance needs to have the access to S3. So I'm going to go for EC2 instance. I'm going to give it permissions. What permissions do I need to give? Is I need to give access to S3. So I'm going to click here S3. It says that you can give either Amazon S3 read access or full access. I'm going to give it full access. So I'm going to create a role for EC2 instance that has access to S3. Next tags, which is fine. I'm going to say EC2 S3 access. So allow EC2 instances to call AWS services. AWS, I would say S3 instead of AWS on your behalf. And we have built this policy to it, and we're going to create this role. So now I have a role EC2 S3 access. So I'm going to go back to my instance, which is, and all your history goes to come here. You can also pin your services here if you wish, if you have any commonly used. Otherwise, EC2 does show you, the history does show you all the commonly used services. I'll go to EC2 back. I'm going to go to the running instances, and now I'm going to provide this instance. There are multiple actions that needs to be done. I'm going to provide this instance action of attach replace IAM role. So I can give it a role so that it can access S3 resources now. So if I see here, it has EC2 access 3 roles. I can attach that and I'll apply this. So now this EC2 instance have the IAM role. So if I go back here, and if the session is not terminated, let's see, a session is not terminated, and I'm able to access the S3. So there is one already present, so I'm able to access that. Okay. So that was specific to EC2. One thing at the end of the session that I would suggest everyone who is following this would be to terminate the sessions, or not only just shut down. I'll go back to the EC2 and I'll show that. Running instances. So here in the actions, instance state, this is currently started. You can stop it, you can reboot it, you can terminate it. So do terminate the instances if you're not planning to use it. So I'm going to terminate the list, and it just says that if it's a EBS packs instance, the default action is that root EBS volume will be deleted when the instance is terminated. But we can always have additional EBS volumes attached which are not deleted, and when you again start that particular instance, then you will be able to use the data stored in that EBS volume. But in case if there is an extra EBS volume that is attached and you don't want the data that is there, then do ensure that you need to delete those EBS instances too. So I'm going to terminate this instance, and I believe there is another question. I have admin access to my user but still can't see the billing info. Stanshu, I'll come back to that question later on. Okay, so how much time do we have? We have quick 10 minutes. Let's see if we can cover S3 in 10 minutes. So for S3, I would say the most important thing to S3 tiers, I would say the storage tiers. So before that, what is Amazon S3? It's a simple storage service. It's an object storage service that offers industry lending scalability, data availability, security, and performance. It's a place where you can store your objects. Everything stored here is in the form of objects. To access Amazon S3, it can be done via API or SDK, or we'll see through console or CLI. It does provide a range of storage classes, in which you can save the data based on the frequency or the size of data that you would like to access the data, and that's where most of the understanding would come into a picture, which is the S3 storage classes. So there are multiple types. S3 standard or intelligent tiering. We'll talk about intelligent tiering at the end. We have infrequent access. This is mainly for the data that is stored, which will not be accessed that frequently. Then we have another infrequently accessed one zone. So by default, every data that is stored in S3 is replicated across 3 availability zones minimum. But in case if the data is not critical, you can choose one zone in frequent access. Obviously, it's going to cost less, but then there is a possibility that you might lose the data because it is not replicated into multiple availability zones. Then we have Amazon S3 Glacier, which is mainly an archive. Once you have the data that need not be accessed frequently, you need to archive it large amount of data, then S3 Glacier is used. Then we have another version, S3 Deep Glacier, which would be saved for, let's say you need to save the data for 10 years for regulatory purposes, but when it is asked to be retrieved, you do have some SLA before you can and you do not want the data accessible within a minute or like that. So in that case, you would use S3 Deep, S3 Glacier Deep Archive. There is a very good comparison table which is here, through which we can look all these tiering. S3 Glacier and S3 Glacier Deep Archive is mainly archive. Rest all these three standard infrequent access and one zone infrequent access uh, is the intelligent tiering that is going to switch between. Intelligent tiering is a way in which if you choose this, it is going to use its own intelligence to place the data where exactly it is required. It is going to optimize your data storing. As you see, all of them is designed for 11 nines durability. I'm going to take a minute here to explain the difference between durability and availability. So durability, it means that the data is durable, means it is not corrupted. So if you save a specific data with Amazon S3, then the chances of that particular data to be corrupted, let's say a bit got being changed or something like that, is very less. That it's supported up to 11 nines. So it's 99.99 percentage clear that your data is not going to be corrupted. Available. What does availability mean? Is that uh, when you're trying to access the data, are you able to get the data at that particular moment? That's availability. So even if you're not able to get the data at that particular moment, that doesn't mean that data is corrupted or data is not present. The data is there, it is durable. It's just that you're not able to access it at that particular moment. And for availability, see, that's where the difference would be coming in depending upon which tier you have. So design for availability is 99.99 for the S3 standard. If it is infrequent access, then it is 99.9 because it is infrequently accessed. One zone, it is 99.95. In how many availability zones your data is stored? Is greater than 3 for all of them except one zone IA. That will be stored for just one. Then there is a minimum capacity charge per object. It means that even if you store 2 KB here in standard IA, it will be charged for 128 KB. Minimum storage duration. For S3 standard, there is nothing like that, but for all other, there would be a minimum storage duration. If you go into archive, it will be even more, 90 days and 180 days. The retrieval fee is based on the per GB retrieved. And the latency is what matters between these tiers and the archive. So you'll be able to access your data within milliseconds. But whereas if it is archive in the Glacier, you'll be able to access it within minutes or hours based on the configuration that you do. But in deep archive, it will be like within hours. You'll not be able to access it within milliseconds if it is like deeply archived or archived in Glacier. Okay, so with 5 minutes left, let's go and create a S3 bucket. So we'll go to S3. I'm going to create a bucket. And here it says that give a DNS compliant bucket name, which means that it cannot have capital letters and stuff. So I'm going to make it as custom. And these are globally unique. So you'll have to use a globally unique value. So custom test 3214. That's good enough to make it globally unique. You'll choose the region in which you would like to do. And if you want to copy settings, no, we are going to do settings so that we see the settings here. Click next. So do you want to keep all the versions? This would mean that you are enabling the versioning. That means any changes that you would be made, all the previous versions would be saved. That does mean that it's going to cost you more because it's going to be more data that is saved, but it is depending upon your organization policy, you can keep all the versions or not. So I'll click on that. Server access logging, it's going to log all the requests that is used to access the particular bucket. So bucket is nothing more than, you can think about it as a folder. It's a folder in which all your data is going to be saved. So I'll leave that. You can enable the encryption. So you can create a default encryption. And then if you see here, there are two server-side encryption. There are two ways you can do it, using the Amazon S3 managed keys or using AWS KMS, which is a key management service. That's a mentioned specific service. We'll talk about that later. We can use either of these service to encrypt the data that are stored. Okay, I'm going to click on next here. This is mainly for access, that who will be able to access it. So I'm going to block all the public access. It is in a private repository, so no one will be able to access it from the outside world. Next, and I'm going to create the bucket. So I've got this bucket custom test 3214. So if I click here, so it gives me an option to create a folder in it. But again, every file that is saved here is another object. You can upload a specific file here. So we can get started by uploading a file. So let me see if I have a file that I can upload it. Give me just 1 second. We can drag and drop files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag drop AWS overview. So I'm going to drag drop this file, AWS overview. It's a 1 MB file and it's going to see. So if you see here, to upload a file larger than 160 GB, you need to use CLI SDK or REST API. You can upload up to 160 GB file here. Click on next. So manage users. So I am the owner. I'll be having the read access. If I want to have another users who can access, I can provide that here. Or I have created a role and I can give that role to the users or the instances so that they will be having access. Okay, I'm going to click on next. So let's see the steering here. So now when I'm storing this particular file in a bucket, so each file in a bucket can be having a different storage class. So this particular file, I can choose whether it is standard, which is like frequently accessed data greater than 3 availability zones. It is intelligent tiering, long-lived data with changes or unknown access patterns. So it is going to intelligently see that whether it should be kept in infrequently accessed or standard. Then we have infrequently accessed, long-lived infrequently accessed data. One zone, it's a non-critical data. That is why it is getting stored in one zone. Then it is Glacier. We are going to archive it with retrieval times ranging from minutes to hours. And Glacier Deep Archive, archive that rarely, if ever, needs to be accessed from within retrieval times in hours. This was the old. It's going to go obsolete sure soon. It's frequently accessed non-critical data, but for that we have in choose among these. So I'm going to go for standard. Click on next, and I can upload. And now we have this. That's pretty much on S3, and we are dot on time. So cool. Yeah, I think we can go for question answers if you guys have any. Yeah, I think they're getting a lot of questions. So let me see. Hold on. Let me put this here to see the questions that we have. I have no. Okay, I think we discussed that. What is the size of the custom S3 bucket? It depends upon the amount of data that you'll be putting in. If you're asking, if say a blank S3 bucket, what will be the size of it? I don't think there's any size of a blank S3 bucket. Did the Kahoot quiz get recorded? Yeah, the Kahoot quiz got recorded. You'll be having it. Can I use S3 for DR scenarios? Yes, S3 is used for DR scenarios. So you might be having your entire application running in one specific region, and you would like to have the entire data to be backed up to S3 in another region, so that in case if anything happens to this region, you can use the data backed up in another region to spin up your resources or to spin up the entire infrastructure with data in the S3 in another region. Any other questions? Now coming back to Shitanshu question, I have admin access to user but still can't see billing info. So let me show that. And I think I did send the resources how to set up that. You by default billing information is not accessible to the users. It is only accessible to the root user. So root user needs to uh, give permission so that they can the other users who have access will be able to access the billing report. So let me show that very quickly how we can do. What I'll do is I'll sign out from here. I'm going to sign in as my root user. Okay, MFA code because my root user has MFA, and that's a really a secure way, because if anyone having access to root user will be having access even to delete my account. So here, if I go to my account, then going below, I am user and role access to billing information. By default, this is not checked. You need to check this, activate IAM access and update. And that's when your IAM users will be able to access your resources. So once you check this, then sign out, go back to your user. Then the next thing I have to do is that if I go to IAM, so I have, along with the administrator access, I have the billing full access. You have to attach this billing full access to your administrator, and then you will be able to access it with the users. Otherwise, you will not be able to access the billing information. So with this step, I will be able to go ahead and access my billing information. Otherwise, it's only root user who will be able to access it. Okay, let me see if we have any more questions. CLI configuration guide to set up access key. Yes, I think I did send that. Let me quickly CLI, AWS CLI setup. There was a link that I shared. This is as simple as following these setup AWS CLI command. And then you can create multiple profiles, and for each profile you can do that. But this is for Amazon Poly, but you can set up the CLI for specifically started with Amazon command line interface. Yeah, we do have two CLI versions: AWS CLI, AWS CLI 2, and AWS CLI 1. I've started using AWS CLI 2, but most people still use CLI 1, so feel free to use whichever you wish. The only difference would be you'll have to use AWS 2 when you write the commands. Okay, let me go back here and see. What is Poly? I think I've gone in the wrong direction here. So Poly is a AWS service. I'll show you that. So Amazon has multiple services, and if you see here, okay, I need to reload this. Hold on. So Amazon Poly, it turns your text into lifelike speech. So from the number of services perspective, there are many services. Poly, I believe it puts under AI. Let's see where exactly it would be. If you, it comes under machine learning, which is Poly. So there are a lot of services. I would say advanced services beyond the core services. So from the core services perspective, we have networking, we have database, we have compute. We did not get a chance to talk about database, but yeah, we probably will do it at a high level in the next session. But then there are advanced services, for example, AR, VR, or machine learning. Other services that will be important for your cloud practitioner would be integration services. Do spend this week as much as possible, I would say, on going through the 6 hours free digital training. It's really important. That one training is going to set you up for your cloud practitioner certification. And there are a lot of, I believe, a lot of hands-on also in that particular session, which they'll be doing. Try and follow that and do it in your own account. Use the free tier. And there is, at the end of that session, there is also a quiz for 30 minutes. There are 30 questions in that particular quiz. Do go through that quiz also. If you have done this 6 hours free digital training, I would say then you are almost there, and few practice exams, and you should be good for the final certification. So then you will be even ready to go and book your final examination. But yeah, I would say this week, if nothing else, then please go ahead and complete the 6 hours free training digital. This is the most important thing that I would say. That's pretty much I had. If no one has any questions, then we can call it the day. Thank you everyone for your time. I hope you would have found this useful. Cheers.